Last spring, I took a Friday night babysitting job for the Davids, a family who lived 5 streets away from my own house in Chandler, Arizona. I was 17, saving for community college fees, and the extra $20 an hour sounded great. Their neighborhood felt safe, single-story homes, trimmed lawns, street lights every 30 yards, so my parents agreed. I arrived at 6:30 p.m. Mrs. David showed me the alarm panel, Wi-Fi, password, and emergency numbers. She tucked 4-year-old Sybil and 6-year-old Tyler into pajamas and left chicken nugget leftovers in the fridge. Mr. David reminded me that bedtime was 8:30 sharp. They drove off to a charity dinner downtown. When the front door closed, I engaged the deadbolt out of habit. The evening started quietly. We drew with crayons, watched half an episode of Paw Patrol, and brushed our teeth at 8:25. I led the kids upstairs, read a short story about a lost puppy, and switched on their nightlight and LED moon that glowed soft blue. They quickly fell asleep. Downstairs, I messaged my mom, then spread biology flashcards across the kitchen island and poured a cold drink. At 9:15, the doorbell rang, making me jump. The Davids hadn't mentioned any visitors. Through the peephole I saw a man in his late 30s, gray hoodie, dark jeans, running shoes. He held a key ring and waved politely at the door camera. A black Honda idled at the curb. He spoke calmly, as if he knew I was listening. "Hey, I'm the kid's Uncle Brandon. I forgot my keys earlier. Need to grab something from the upstairs bedroom." His tone wasn't pushy, but every warning alarm in my head went off. The Davids had never mentioned a brother through the locked door, I replied, keeping my voice steady. The parents didn't tell me anyone was coming. "That's on me," he said. "I told my sister I had the spare. Look, Sybil asked for her purple blanket earlier, right? She always wants it when she's tired. And Tyler had mac and cheese before changing into his dinosaur PJs. I know their routine." He was correct. My stomach tightened.
Maybe he was family, maybe not.
I stepped away from the door and opened the Baby Monitor app. Both kids slept, breathing softly. I glanced at the living room security tablet. The outdoor camera showed the man shifting his weight, but not touching the handle. I called Mrs. David. No answer. I tried Mr. David straight to voicemail. I considered dialing 911, but I hesitated. Arizona. Dispatch fines for false alarms. A text pinged. "Sorry, the banquet is loud. Everything okay?" It was Mrs. David. I typed fast, "Man. Here. Says he's Brandon. Your brother needs him." 3 dots appeared. Then her reply, "We don't have a brother. Call the police." Now my hand shook. I took a slow breath and dialed 911. I gave the address, the description, and stressed that 2 children were asleep upstairs from the hallway. I heard a soft tap. The man knocked again. Still polite. "I really need that blanket, promise. Lobby 2 minutes. I didn't answer. He waited 10 seconds. Then the door camera showed him moving to the front windows, cupping his hands to see inside. I killed the interior lights so he couldn't spot me in the dim glow of my phone. I watched him trace the siding toward the side gate. A moment later, the backyard motion sensor light flashed on. Then off. The dispatcher stayed on the line. "Units are 3 minutes out. Stay indoors and keep doors locked." I crept to the patio door. The lock was still secure, the curtain drawn. No movement outside. Now the house felt too quiet. Even the refrigerator hum seemed muted. 2 cruiser sirens approached, then fell silent. Red-blue lights strobed through the blinds. I remained in the hallway until an officer announced his badge number through the locked porch door, prompting me to open it. Officers then searched the yard and nearby streets, confirming the Honda was gone. with tire tracks leading towards the main road. Neighbors' doorbells offered no useful footage, as the man had parked out of camera range. The children slept through the entire ordeal. The officers took my statement, commending my caution, and stayed until Mr. and Mrs. David arrived home, their faces pale with shock. Mrs. David embraced me tightly, repeatedly expressing her gratitude for protecting their children. By 12:30 a.m., the patrol cars departed. The parents insisted on driving me home.
I accepted the ride, constantly looking over my shoulder that night, replaying every second. How did he know the children's dinner and bedtime routines? Had he been watching through a window earlier, or overheard me talking? The Davids later discovered a small gap between a window frame and its lock, suggesting he might have eased it open before my arrival and listened from the yard.
He vanished before police came, which meant he either carried a scanner app or just had sharp instincts. Weeks passed before I took another evening job. When I did, I brought privacy film for exposed windows, replaced flimsy latches, and kept a baseball bat within reach. I stopped assuming a calm voice, and personal details proved anything. Detectives who followed up later said similar men had been reported near elementary schools, collecting fragments of conversations. To use his credibility, they believed he tried 3 houses that month, always claiming a family tie. Hearing that didn't comfort me. It only showed his polite approach was practiced. The case remains open, and no arrests have been made so far. I still babysit, but only for relatives now, and I never ignore a gut feeling. Safety hinges on small choices: locking a side gate, silencing a stranger, double-checking a story. I made those choices that night, and 2 children kept dreaming under a blue moon nightlight instead of waking to a stranger's footsteps, sometimes long after midnight. I wake up to the memory of a soft knock and that steady voice asking for a child's blanket. It sounds patient, almost friendly, waiting for someone to trust him. I hope no one ever does. I'm not one for ghost stories or wild imagination, but what happened to me last month still keeps me up at night. My name's Leah. I'm 32, and I work as a nurse in a small hospital in upstate New York. My shifts often end late, and I drive home on quiet roads through patches of woods and farmland. It's usually peaceful, just me, my old Honda Civic, and the radio. But that night, everything changed. It was around 11:30 p.m., and I was exhausted after a 12-hour shift. The main road, Route 12, was my usual way home, a 2-lane road flanked by trees and the occasional gas station. As I approached the turnoff about 5 miles from my house, I saw orange construction signs and cones blocking the road. A large arrow indicated a left turn onto an unfamiliar side road, marked with a Detour roadwork ahead sign. I sighed, longing to be home, showered, and asleep, but I had no alternative. I veered onto the narrow, unlit road. The detour immediately felt unsettling. It was barely wide enough for 2 cars, with dense trees pressing in from both sides. There were no streetlights, no houses, only darkness and the crunch of gravel beneath my tires. My headlights pierced the night, but their reach was limited. I lowered the radio volume to concentrate, gripping the steering wheel tightly. The road twisted and turned, and I continuously anticipated signs of construction, workers' equipment, anything, but there was nothing, just endless trees and the faint hum of my engine. About 10 minutes in, I started to feel uneasy. I hadn't seen another car, and the road seemed to go on forever. I checked my GPS, but the signal was spotty, and it kept rerouting. This doesn't feel right, I muttered to myself. That's when I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw it a truck, maybe 100 yards back. moving slowly. Its headlights were off. My stomach dropped. Who drives at night with no lights? I told myself it was probably nothing. Just some local taking the same detour. But the truck stayed there, matching my speed. Not getting closer, but not falling back either. I sped up a little, hoping to put some distance between us. The truck did too. My heart started pounding. I tried to stay calm, telling myself I was overreacting. Maybe their lights were broken. Maybe they were lost too. But then I noticed something else. There were no construction signs anymore. Not a single cone or barricade. The detour signs had just stopped. I realized I hadn't seen any evidence of roadwork on Route 12 either. No equipment, no torn-up pavement, just those signs and cones blocking the way. Panic crept in. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but there was no service. Of course, out here in the middle of nowhere, I was on my own. The truck was still behind me, a dark shape in my mirror, lurking like a shadow. I pressed the gas harder, my car rattling over the uneven road. The truck kept pace. I could make out its shape. Now, a beat-up pickup, maybe black or dark blue, with no visible driver in the darkness. I started talking to myself, trying to stay grounded. Okay, just find a way back to the main road. You're fine. But the road kept winding, and I had no idea where I was. A faint glow ahead signaled hope. Another car's headlights. Relief washed over me. Maybe a cop or someone who could help. As it drew closer, I slowed, flashing my high beams for assistance. A white SUV. It slowed too. Pulling over, I stopped, engine running, and rolled down my window just enough to shout, "Hey, I think someone's following me." The driver, a middle-aged man with glasses, leaned out. "You okay?" he asked, concerned. I pointed behind me. "There's a truck back there, no lights on, been tailing me for miles." He squinted into the darkness, then his face changed. "There's no truck," he said. I whipped around to check my mirror. The road was empty. My blood ran cold. I swore it was there seconds ago. "Listen," the guy said. "This road's weird. I got detoured here too, but there's no construction on 12. I checked. You should follow me back to the main road." I nodded, too shaken to argue. I followed his SUV, my eyes darting to my mirrors every second. No truck, just darkness. We drove for about 10 minutes until we hit Route 12 again. The construction signs and cones were gone like they'd never been there. I thanked the guy who said he was calling the cops to report it, and I sped home, locking every door behind me. When I got to my apartment, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it in my head, the signs, the truck, the way it vanished. The next day, I called the sheriff's office. They said no road work was scheduled on Route 12 that night. No reports of detours either. I searched online and found a few local forums where people mentioned similar experiences. Fake detours, strange vehicles, roads that led nowhere. Some called it a prank. Others hinted at something darker, like thieves, or worse. I don't know what I saw that night. Maybe it was a prank, or maybe I was just tired and imagined things. But I can't shake the feeling that something was wrong with that road, like it was waiting for me. I take a different road home now, even if it's longer, and every time I see a construction sign, my heart skips a beat. I don't think I'll ever feel safe driving alone at night again. When I was 15, I met my current husband, who had just turned 16, in an art class. Our small town didn't offer much in the way of entertainment for two teenagers just starting to date, beyond the occasional trip to the local Target. There wasn't much to do. The town itself, though, quaint, held a certain charm, rooted in its history. People came from miles around to explore its old mining routes, or to visit the river that carved its way through the nearby canyon. The river, with its winding trails and scenic views, was the heartbeat of the area, a place where locals and tourists alike could lose themselves in nature. I had grown up exploring the river's trails, hiking and biking them countless times. I knew the area intimately. It felt like an extension of my own backyard. Typically, it was a safe, tranquil spot where the rustling leaves and the gentle flow of water created a calming atmosphere. A particular favorite was a half-mile trail leading to a bridge overlooking the river. This bridge, though not grand, provided a stunning vista of the water, framed by the rugged canyon walls. It was a place where I always found peace, where time seemed to slow. However, another bridge stood nearby, imposing in both its size and reputation. It was one of the world's tallest bridges, an engineering marvel that attracted adventurers and tourists alike. The hikes around this second bridge offered breathtaking panoramic views of the canyon and the river winding far below. Yet, despite its beauty, the bridge carried a dark history over the years. It had become a tragic landmark, a place where too many people had chosen to end their lives. The weight of those stories lingered in the air, a quiet reminder of the bridge's somber shadow. My husband and I, eager for a simple adventure, decided to take a walk down the trail to the smaller bridge. One evening, around 6 p.m., the river sat nestled in a canyon where the steep walls seemed to swallow the sunlight long before the sunset. The trail was familiar, but as we set out, I couldn't shake a subtle unease. The canyon's natural darkness was creeping in faster than I'd expected, and the air felt heavier than usual. The hike to the bridge was short, just a half-mile, with a right turn that would lead us onto the bridge itself. But as we walked, the light faded rapidly, and the forest around us grew quieter. The usual sounds of birds and rustling leaves were replaced by an unsettling stillness. By the time we reached the turn to the bridge, it was pitch black. Even though it was only around 7 p.m., the darkness was disorienting, as if the canyon had decided to close in around us. We flicked on our phone flashlights, their beams cutting through the inky night, but they only illuminated a small circle around us. The rest of the world felt like it had vanished. My stomach churned with a growing sense of dread, a feeling I couldn't explain. I'd been on this trail dozens of times, but tonight something felt wrong. I suggested turning back, but my husband, always a bit braver, or perhaps just more stubborn, wanted to keep going. As we approached the turn, I froze there just 3 feet off the trail where the bridge began. Stood a tall figure. My flashlight beam caught his back, and my heart skipped a beat. He was massive, at least 6 or 7 feet tall, with a bulky frame that suggested he weighed 200 to 250 pounds. He wore a brown flannel shirt and dark pants, either blue or black. His brown hair stuck straight up, almost unnaturally, like it had been sculpted rather than grown. But it wasn't just his size that unnerved me. His proportions were off. His arms seemed too long for his body, dangling in a way that didn't look quite human. His head was round, almost perfectly spherical, like a basketball perched atop of his shoulders. I couldn't see his feet, which only added to the surreal quality of the moment. He stood perfectly still, alone, in the total darkness, staring down a hill. "What is that?" I whispered to my husband, my voice trembling. He was frozen too, his eyes locked on the figure, unblinking. The three of us stood in a tense, silent tableau. A minute doesn't sound long, but with a pounding heart and every instinct screaming to run, it felt like an eternity. The figure remained motionless, not acknowledging us. I couldn't tell if it was human or something else entirely. My mind raced. How did it get here? There were no other cars, At the trailhead. Why was it standing alone in the dark, off the trail, staring into nothing? And why wouldn't it turn around? Was he hiding his face? Or was he hiding what he was doing?
My husband, his voice shaking but steady, managed to call out, "Hey man, what are you doing?"
At that moment, the figure began to turn slowly, deliberately. My stomach dropped, a wave of nausea washing over me. Whatever gut instinct I'd been ignoring roared to life, screaming at me to leave. Now I didn't wait to see his face. I grabbed my husband's arm and bolted, sprinting back toward the car. My flashlight beam bounced wildly as I ran, my breath coming in sharp gasps. I didn't look back, not once. I didn't want to know if we were being chased behind me. I heard my husband yelling my name, his footsteps pounding the dirt as he tried to keep up.
I'd gotten a head start, and I was already several feet ahead. We reached the car, panting and shaking, and I fumbled with the keys to unlock it. The parking lot was still empty. No other cars in sight. The drive back to town was 5 or 6 miles, depending on the route, and there was no cell service the entire way.
My heart didn't stop racing until we saw the first streetlights. Neither of us spoke much, both too rattled to process what had happened. A few days later, curiosity got the better of me. I couldn't stop thinking about that figure. Was it a person? A prank? A trick of the light? I convinced my husband to go back during the day this time, with a group of friends for safety. I needed to make sense of it. Maybe it was a jacket draped over a pole, a strangely shaped rock, or even a forgotten prop from some local stunt. But when we reached the spot where the figure had been, there was nothing. No pole, no jacket, no beanie, nothing to explain what we'd seen. What I did notice, though, sent a fresh chill down my spine. The spot where the figure had been standing dropped off sharply, a steep 4-foot decline. If that figure had been standing there, it would have made him not 6 or 7 feet tall, but closer to 8 or 10 feet. The realization hit me like a punch. Whatever we'd seen wasn't just tall, it was impossibly. The town and river steeped in history, beautiful and tragic. Stories of mining, lives lost on the bridge, and the canyon's beauty intertwine into something alive. I don't know what we saw that night. A person, ghost, or something else. The motionless figure still haunts me, an unsolved mystery of the river. I kept this to myself for a long time, but silence helps no one. Someone might need a warning. I'm a security guard at a small German airport. My night shift is routine. Checking doors, scanning badges, watching cameras for 5 years. It was mid-July, the heart of summer travel. Families pushed strollers, tourists dragged noisy suitcases, and every check-in desk had a slow line. Even with all that movement, the terminal felt wrong that night. I couldn't explain why, so I kept working near midnight. I took my break. I walked to the bakery, brought a chocolate bar and a can of energy drink, and sat at a metal table. While I watched a short video on my phone, I felt an urge to turn around. A man in a black rain jacket stood behind me. The hood was down, and his eyes locked on mine. He didn't glance away, didn't pretend to look at the shops, only at me. I held his stare for 2 seconds, then looked back at my phone. Strange travelers pass through airports every day. Most are harmless. I finished half the drink, put my phone in my pocket, and stepped into the restroom to wash my hands before my break ended. When I came back, the same man stood about 50 meters away in the main hallway. His head was tilted, eyes fixed on me. Again, the instant he saw that, I noticed him. He turned and slipped into a side corridor. No sound, no hesitation. A quiet alarm rang in my head, but he had broken no rule. I returned to my post and spent the next few hours pacing gates, checking locks, and waiting for sunrise. At dawn, my phone battery died. The walk home is short, so I put the phone in my pocket and left halfway back. I remembered the power bank in my backpack, connected the cable, and kept moving. 10 minutes from my apartment, I pressed the power button to see the charge. A message I had never seen before filled the screen. Unknown AirTag detected. It is moving with you a distance of 800 meters. I do not own an AirTag. I stopped walking. The street was empty, except for a row of dim lamps. Another notification appeared. It is 600 meters, then 500. I searched for a simple answer. Maybe someone nearby had dropped luggage with a tracker. The numbers kept falling. 400. 300. I began to jog the phone. Vibrated 200. I turned the corner and ran. My legs went numb, yet the numbers fell faster. 100. I reached my building, jammed the key into the lock, slammed the door, and pressed my back against it. The hallway was silent. The screen showed 50 meters, then 20, then 10. I looked through the peephole. Nothing but an empty street. My hands trembled as I emptied my pockets and bag onto the floor. Nothing seemed out of place. I considered calling the police, but what would I even say? My phone screen showed a signal indicating someone was following me, yet I dismissed it, attributing it to overtiredness from a long shift. Half asleep, I changed clothes, lay on my bed, and put on a horror story video. The narrator's steady voice usually calmed me. I recalled the initial few minutes before sleep took over. I woke up later in darkness. The video had ended, but the home screen glowed, revealing another notification. Unknown AirTag detected. It is moving with you. Distance. 2 meters. 2 meters. It was inside my room.
I couldn't move. I locked the phone. The screen went dark. My eyes adjusted at the foot of the bed next to the wardrobe. I saw the outline of a man in a black rain jacket. The same face staring again. A rough cry escaped my throat. He stepped back, opened the door, and was gone before my feet touched the floor.
By the time the police arrived, the apartment was empty. No fingerprints, no tracker found, just a single wet footprint near my bed. The officers walked every room, checked the windows, and searched the stairwell. The doorframe was undamaged. The only key inside was mine. They advised me to stay with a relative. I slept on my sister's couch with the hallway light on, and my phone set to alert at the faintest motion. The next morning, I returned with a locksmith. We installed new deadbolts and a camera above the door. Then we turned my backpack inside out on the kitchen table at the bottom seam of an inner pocket. Hidden under the lining was a white plastic disc, smaller than a coin. An AirTag. Someone had sliced the fabric, placed the tracker, and glued the seam so neatly. I never felt it. That person had stood close enough to slip a hand into my bag without my notice, maybe in the bakery, maybe while I check my watch at the exit. I will never know. I keep the tracker sealed in a plastic evidence bag. It sits on my desk as a reminder that danger can look ordinary and stand right behind you without making a sound. I still work night shifts, but I no longer walk home. Each time a phone vibrates in my pocket, I think of that silent face watching me, waiting for the moment I would notice him. If you ever feel watched, trust the feeling and act fast. I was lucky the next person might not be. I've always loved camping. The smell of pine, the crackle of a fire, the quiet of the woods. It's where I feel alive. Last summer, me and my buddies, Jake, Matt, and Amber, planned a weekend trip to Blackwood Forest, a dense stretch of pines, about 2 hours from our town. It's a popular spot, but it's huge with trails that twist for miles and spots where the trees block out the sun. We weren't worried when we camped there before, but this trip is unforgettable. Months later, I still wake up sweating, thinking about Jake. We arrived at Blackwood on a Friday afternoon. The four of us crammed into Matt's beat-up Jeep. The air was warm, but the forest felt cool as we set up camp near a small creek. Our site was off the main trail, a clearing with a fire pit that other campers had left. Jake, always the loud one, who could make you laugh even when you were angry, was in a great mood, cracking jokes and tossing a football around while Amber set up the tent. The quieter Matt was already fiddling with the campfire as I unloaded the cooler with soft drinks and hot dogs. The usual night fell quickly. By 9 p.m., it was pitch black, so dark you couldn't see your hand in front of your face without a flashlight. We sat around the fire, roasting marshmallows and telling dumb stories. Jake started talking about an old Blackwood legend he'd heard, something about people disappearing in the 80s. Never found Amber, rolled her eyes, called it campfire bite, and we all laughed. But I noticed Jake kept glancing at the trees like he was half expecting something to step out. Around 11, Jake said he was going for a walk. Like always, I'm going to take a leak and check out the creek, he said, grabbing his flashlight. Amber told him not to wander too far, and he waved her off, saying, "I'm not a kid, Mom." That was Jake, cocky, but not in a bad way. We didn't think much of it. The creek was maybe 100 yards from camp, and we could hear it bubbling from where we sat. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Amber started getting antsy, checking her phone for the time. "He's probably just screwing with us," Matt said, but he didn't sound sure. I grabbed my flashlight and called out, "Jake, quit messing around." My voice echoed, swallowed by the trees. No answer. That's when my stomach twisted. Blackwood's big, but it's not that big. He couldn't have gone far. We decided to look for him. Amber stayed at camp in case he came back, while Matt and I split up to cover more ground. I headed toward the creek, shining my flashlight across the underbrush. The beam caught roots and rocks, but no Jake. I shouted his name every few steps, my voice sounding smaller each time. The woods were dead, quiet. No crickets, no owls, just my boots crunching on pine needles. I kept thinking I'd see him any second, grinning like an idiot, ready to scare me. But the further I went, the worse the feeling got at the creek. I found his flashlight. It was lying in the dirt, still on, pointed at a cluster of ferns. My heart sank. Jake wasn't careless. He wouldn't just drop it. I picked it up, called his name louder. Nothing. I scanned the area, the light shaking in my hand. There were footprints in the mud, Jake's boots heading toward the water. Then they just stopped like he'd vanished. Mid-step, I yelled for Matt, my voice cracking. He came running, and when he saw the flashlight, his face went pale. We searched for hours. Amber joined us, her voice held from shouting. We followed the creek, checked the trails, even doubled back to camp, thinking maybe he'd gotten turned around by 2 a.m. We were exhausted, but we couldn't stop. Amber was crying, saying we should have never let him go alone. Matt kept muttering about how Jake was probably fine, just lost, but I knew better. Something was wrong. The air felt heavy, like the forest was watching us. At dawn, we called the cops. A ranger station was nearby, and they sent out a search party. Rangers, dogs, even a helicopter. We showed them the flashlight, the footprints. They asked if Jake had been acting weird, if he'd wandered off on purpose. I told them no. He was just Jake, Happy, dumb, adventurous. Jake, the rangers nodded, but I could tell they were thinking the worst. Blackwood had a reputation. People got lost here, not often, but it happened. Hikers, campers, even locals. Most were found, some weren't. Days passed, the search grew bigger. Volunteers, more dogs, drones. We stayed at the campground, barely sleeping, helping where we could. Amber was a wreck, blaming herself. Matt stopped talking much, just stared at the trees like they'd spit Jake out if he glared hard enough. I kept replaying that night, wondering if I'd missed something the way Jake had looked at the woods. The silence after he left, those footprints ending at the creek, it didn't make sense. The rangers found nothing. No clothes, no blood, no signs of a struggle. They checked caves, ravines, even the old logging roads. Deeper in the forest, the dogs lost their scent at the creek, same as the footprints. One ranger, an older guy, pulled me aside and said, "Sometimes people just disappear. Blackwood's tricky." He said too many places to get lost. I wanted to punch him. Jake didn't just get lost. He was gone. Weeks turned into months. The search, scaled back then, stopped. The cops said they'd keep his file open, but I could tell they'd given up. Amber moved away. She couldn't handle staying in town. Matt and I don't talk much anymore. It's like seeing each other brings it all back. I still drive out to Blackwood sometimes, walk to the creek, stare at the spot where his footprints stopped. I don't know what I'm looking for. A sign. Maybe something to explain it. I've read about missing people in forests. Cases like Jake's, where they vanish without a trace. Some say it's bears or cougars, but there'd be evidence, right? Others talk about sinkhole or hidden caves, but the rangers check those. I've even seen posts online about weirder stuff, lights in the trees, voices calling people deeper into the woods. I don't believe that crap, but at night when I'm alone, I wonder, what if Jake saw something? What if he followed it? I dream about him sometimes. In the dreams, I'm back at the creek, and he's standing there, smiling like nothing's wrong. But when I get closer, his face changes blank, like he's not Jake. I wake up gasping, my heart pounding. I don't know what happened to him. I don't think I ever will. But I know one thing. I'm never camping in Blackwood again. The woods took my friend, and I'm not giving them a chance to take me to... It starts off with this dude named Isaiah. He was a landscaper I met about a year before this incident. For context, I also do landscaping. That's why this story exists. I was working with a company that gave me a lot of problems. I can't say their name because they might sue, but I met Isaiah at a landfill while dumping a work trailer. I was the driver and foreman. He noticed me and started a conversation. Nothing weird at first. I told him I'd been landscaping for a year and wanted to start my own business. One day he gave me and my crew a business card, but I didn't think much of it because I had a job already. Fast forward to the day.
Everything changed. I don't remember the exact year, but I called Isaiah's card because my job laid me off and I needed work. He remembered me and offered to pick me up at 6:00 a.m. I didn't have a car at that time, so I gave him my address. I was happy. I found work again, or so. I thought. I got up at 4:30 a.m.
My ex and his dad had to work at 5, so I got up with them. I'm not proud of it, but after they left, I used a substance I shouldn't have. I don't do that stuff anymore. Right after that, Isaiah called. I got ready quickly. Jeans, work, boots, a hoodie, and ran out the door, still trying to tie my boots and adjust my belt. He picked me up. We greeted each other, and I asked if I could vape. He said yes, and we hit the freeway. That's when things started to get weird. He asked if I'd had my morning sausage. I asked what he meant, and he laughed and said something inappropriate about relationships. I told him I didn't feel comfortable with that. He laughed again. He pulled over briefly to check the trailer, and I got a bad gut feeling. But I told myself it was just anxiety from earlier when he got back in. He started asking more weird questions, like if I'd ever thought of becoming a dancer. I told him no, and he kept pushing it, saying I'd be good at it.
I reminded him I had a boyfriend and wouldn't do something like that. We kept driving. He started touching my leg. I asked him to stop. He just laughed and moved his hand back. We stopped at a gas station, and I used the bathroom again. I did something I shouldn't have. I used again. When I got back, he texted asking if I wanted a drink.
I asked for a Red Bull when he came out. I thanked him, and we kept driving. But I got another gut feeling. I called my sister and told her I felt like something bad was going to happen. She laughed at first, but I told her I was serious. I hung up when he came back on the road. He opened the glove box, pulled out a knife, and told me to keep quiet. Then he said he was joking, and it was for cutting fruit. I laughed nervously. We arrived at a gated community for work. He told the security guard both addresses we were going to and gave my name. I was too scared to talk. The first job only lasted 30 minutes, but it felt like a nightmare. He kept invading my space. This second house took an hour, and the behavior continued. He made more inappropriate comments about me and my appearance. I tried to act tough and said something to scare him off. I kept texting my sister, telling her everything he noticed, and asked who I was texting. I lied and said it was about plans after work. That's when the fear kicked in. I was thinking this man could hurt me, and no one would know. I opened the Red Bull to get some energy. At our fourth job, I needed to use the bathroom, and he offered to drive me to one. He called me a nickname I didn't like. I asked him not to, and he apologized. I used the bathroom and called my ex, told him everything. Then I tried my sister again, but no answer. I used the last bit of what I had on me. Again, not smart, but I was desperate to stay alert. When I got back in the truck, he asked why I took so long. I made up a reason. We got back on the road, and by 11:07 a.m., he said we were done for the day, but it wasn't over. He got on the phone and started speaking in Spanish. I didn't understand, but I felt uneasy. Then he asked if I had plans. I lied and said yes. He said my boyfriend wouldn't be off work for another 3 hours, and named the company he worked for. My heart dropped. Then he suggested getting a hotel. I panicked. I started messaging family, trying to alert them, but we were deep in an unfamiliar area. He asked if I used drugs. I said no. He then made a call asking for some, and started laughing and staring at me. He asked how old I was, and I told him 19. Then he started asking more personal and inappropriate questions. I gave ridiculous answers, hoping to throw him off. Finally, we got back into town. I drank the rest of the Red Bull, planning to run if I had the chance. He began talking about his family. I thought, how could he say all this while acting like a predator? We stopped at a bank close to my house. I considered running, but tried talking to him. First, I asked, how would you feel if someone did this to your daughter or wife? He hit my head against the window. I was dizzy, but tried to stay calm. He said the money was for plans I never agreed to. As we drove past my street, I saw my mom and grandma outside. I had to hold back tears. Then we passed the police station, and I remembered you can text 911. So I did. I told them my name, age, and what was happening. They responded and asked where I was. I gave all the info I could. He asked if I was tired. I realized he had drugged my drink, but the other stuff in my system must have blocked the effect. He asked if I wanted to stop for a drink. I said yes, hoping for a chance to escape. We stopped at a gas station, but he threatened me not to run. I stayed in the truck, and he watched. Then we stopped again. This time, I asked if I could get food and go inside. He let me. I went in and dropped items from the shelves on purpose. I looked at a store clerk and went to the bathroom. I locked the door and saw another woman inside. I loudly told my ex on the phone what was happening. The woman knocked and asked if I wanted help. I said yes. She told him the restroom was closed. Not long after, police knocked and told me it was safe to come out. I hugged one of them, so relieved. I had made it outside. I saw Isaiah's truck surrounded by cops. He tried to come near me, but they stopped him. I told the officers everything. One of them took me to the car and said Isaiah was denying everything. I told them to test the drink. It came back positive for sleeping pills. Still, the cops treated it like a she said situation. They drove me home and collected my clothes for evidence. They told me to stay inside and lock everything. So I called my mom to come get me. Later, I thought about how the substance I used might have saved me from passing out. My parents came, and I finally cried in their car. We told the whole family I was safe. I stayed somewhere else for a while, and later moved back in with my parents. Now it's 2025. I'm 22 and still doing landscaping, but lately weird things have been happening. Unknown calls, someone breathing and hanging up. Photos of me were left at the house. The police said it might be a prank, but I'm not so sure. The fear hasn't fully gone away, but I survived. My name is Ella, and I'm a 17-year-old girl who works at a soccer stadium in my state. For personal reasons, I'm not going to disclose the location or name. For context, the stadium had 3 main clubs where members who were willing to pay would come in and get food, drinks, raffle tickets, meet the mascots, get a good view of the field, etc. The female club was downstairs on the floor level, where the female families would come and watch both male and female games. Then the second club, called Intrusion, which was on the west side of the stadium, and last the club I worked in as a busser and soda person, Zag. It was the main club, which was located on the east side of the stadium. Recently we had a big game between 2 big soccer teams, which meant tension would be higher than normal. Usually we have our regulars, whom I can greet by name, but in the bigger games like this, many customers were random people I'd only ever see once in my life. Everything was going as normally as it could until right before halftime began. During halftime, the members of the club can come back inside from their outdoor seats and eat the food we have cooked. I take plates, refill silverware, check on the food line, take photos of families, and go behind the bar for the soda machines. I was doing sodas, trying to keep up with the line that just kept getting longer, when an older-looking man, maybe 60 or 70, came up. "Hi, what can I get you?" I said with a practice smile. "Coke," he responded. His voice was gruff, like he'd been smoking most of his life. I gave him his drink and began pouring ice for the next person in line. When I noticed the man hadn't moved, "Straws are right over there," I said, pointing down the bar, assuming he was awaiting a straw. But he still didn't move. I noticed he was staring at me a bit more than usual. Finally, after what seemed like forever, he walked off. Not long. He came back. "Hello again. Do you need a refill?" I asked, trying to keep my tired voice from showing how old are you. He spoke with that same gruff voice. I chuckled nervously. Not sure how to answer. I'm not allowed to say Company policy. I stated just trying to get this guy away from me. But he only smiled and showed his yellow and chipped teeth. He looked down at my name and let out a chuckle that rattled my core. Pretty name for a pretty lady. It wasn't uncommon for people to try and flirt with the women who worked here. They're all drunk and enjoying the game. I just smiled and thanked him until he walked off. I went into the back area where the kitchen was and told my co-workers about the weird guy outside. They laughed and agreed that it was an uncomfortable situation. Luckily, I hadn't seen him the rest of the night after the game. We all cleaned up and began making our way to the main kitchen, which was downstairs with all the dirty dishes and linen. I was walking behind everyone, pushing some random cart. When I saw him again, he stood by the bathroom staring at all of us. That's when my gut told me something was wrong. The game ended 30 minutes ago. Shouldn't he have left by now? What was he doing over here anyway? Are there bathrooms by the entry and exit? I brushed it off and kept walking. I clocked out and began making my way around the outside of the stadium to the main street that I usually walk down to get to my car. There were always police around directing traffic for both pedestrians and motorists, so I felt a bit safer until I got a block away and the red and blue flashing lights were in the distance. I turned around to grab my car keys from my bag when I saw him again. He was walking right under a street lamp. I knew it was him. I began walking faster, but so did he. I got to my car, my hands shaking with adrenaline and fear. I fumbled with my keys until I felt a cold hand grip my shoulder. I spun around, and it was the same man. He was close, too close. He held something in his hand, but I couldn't see what from the darkness of the business alleyway. I was terrified. He didn't speak, but he grabbed my arm and began dragging me away. He pulled out some of my hair and dropped it on the ground, just in case I did go missing. My DNA would be around. I clawed and scratched at his arm, pulling against him the best I could. 2 men rounded the corner of the small business parking lot and froze. "Help me," I yelled, almost begging for my life. They rushed over, and the first man grabbed my other arm while the second shoved the old man away. I began crying and shakily called 911. The police came and took the man into custody. I thanked the strangers for helping me and drove off. This happened 2 weeks ago, and I'm still terrified of walking to my car alone. The police took the man's fingerprints, and he was involved with 2 other potential kidnappings at other stadiums around. I still can't feel safe around anyone. I park much closer, and I don't ever walk around without some sort of weapon. I'm forever thankful to the 2 men who rounded that corner when they did. If they hadn't, I don't know what would have happened. Always trust your gut when it thinks something is wrong, because it might be. I belong to a small scout troop in Belgium. Every summer we pick one night to test our courage. We visit an old World War II fort that people call Fort 17. The army closed it long ago. The front doors are blocked with bricks, and heavy steel trees grow over the roof. To most people it looks forgotten, but to us it is the perfect place for a secret adventure. We arrive after midnight. The road beside the fort is still busy, so we park our van 2 sharp turns away. We switch off every light, even the little ones on our phones. Each scout ties a dark cloth around the shiny parts of their pack. We speak only in whispers when a car passes. We freeze like statues until the headlights fade. The only way in is a crack high on the outside wall. Long ago, older scouts drilled metal bolts there for climbing ropes one by one. We clip our harnesses to the rope. The stone feels wet and cold. Halfway up, I hear a truck coming. I press my body flat against the wall. The truck roars past its bright beams, sweeping the rock just below my boots. My heart pounds, but it keeps going.
I climb again and roll through the hole at the top. The change is sudden inside the fort. The air is always cool, about 14 degrees. No matter the season, all sounds from the road disappear. Even my breath seems to stop. A thin wind slides past my legs, as if the fort is breathing out. The darkness is perfect.
I cannot see my hand. Our rule is clear. No flashlights allowed. We move by touch and memory only. Each tunnel is just wide enough for my shoulders. If I stand straight, my head bumps the roof. So I walk with my back bent, wet walls, brush my sleeves, footsteps, slap the stone, and then echo back, sounding like someone behind me. When I halt, the echo takes one extra step. It is like having an invisible shadow that never leaves. Tonight, I am the guide. I crawl into the fort before the others. My job is to wait at a side tunnel so the new scouts do not get lost. They will not know I am there. That surprise will teach them to stay calm in the dark. I count my paces, find my small nook and crouch against the wall. My gloves rest on the cool concrete. The only thing to do now is wait. Time moves slowly in black. Silence. My ears start to notice tiny noises. My pulse cloth rubbing my arm. The light hiss of the tunnel wind after what feels like an hour. A weak light flickers at the far end of the main passage. It bobs up and down like a candle carried by someone walking carefully, smiling in the dark. I guess a clever scout has hidden a match in a birthday candle. We banned flashlights, but we never banned candles. I plan to step out, scare him, and take it away. The flame drifts closer. It is smaller than I thought, perhaps the size of a pea, cold white, not orange. I listen for footsteps. I hear nothing at all. 5 meters away, the light blinks out like someone pinched it. The hallway returns to perfect night. I lean forward, trying to spot any glow on the floor or wall, but there is none. I wait for the shuffling of shoes. Still nothing. My smile fades. A soft sound like cloth on stone whispers right before me. Warm, damp air brushes my face. I smell sweat and earth, the smell of a person who has walked a long way. Someone stands inches away, but I cannot see him. I hold my breath. The strange person also stops breathing. We both freeze, sharing the same small pocket of air. Seconds pass, like full minutes. My lungs burn. My ears ring. I do not dare move, because I do not know who or what is facing me. At last, the warm breath slides away to my left. The air cools again. Somewhere far down the passage, a faint red glow appears, then vanishes. Quiet returns. I count slowly to 40, then let my breath out. My legs shake. I think about running back to the rope, but younger scouts will enter soon. I must stay at my post. Footsteps finally come from my left. The heavy thud of standard army boots. Relief floods me. Only our scouts wear those boots. On this trip, a tall shape fills the passage. I reach out and put a hand on his arm. Keep going straight, I said. Then take the first right tunnel. Stay together. He nods. I pause and ask one quick question.
Still whispering, who climbed in first tonight? He frowns me. He answers, I'm the first one in. If he is first, then who was near me? Only minutes ago. I let him pass and listen to his steady steps fade away. The tunnel wind seems colder now. The rest of the night feels endless. 3 more scouts pass my station.
I guide them with a quiet tap on the shoulder and a few words. None of them saw any light. None heard another person. When the last hiker goes by, I wait 10 extra minutes, then stand up. My knees crack. The silence inside the fort suddenly feels like a weight on my chest. I walk toward the exit tunnel, tracing the wall with my fingertips. Every time my boot lands, I hear that single echo behind me, one extra step that is not mine. I speed up the echo. Speeds up. I tell myself, it is only the strange shape of these tunnels. I keep saying it until I reach the shaft. Climbing out is harder than climbing in my arms. Tremble, but I grip the rope and haul myself up. A pale strip of dawn shows above the trees. Birds sing. The normal world has returned. Other scouts sit near the van laughing about bruises and rope burns. They ask why I look so pale. I say, I'm just tired. We drive home windows down, letting fresh morning air push the forts, chill away. I never speak about the tiny white light or the warm breath in the dark. But each summer when the troop plans another night at Fort 17, I make one change. I never again wait alone inside. Someone else can guide the scouts while I stay near the rope. The fort can keep its secret. I have heard it breathing, and that is enough for me. I rent a small blue house on the east side of Salt Lake City. It is perfect for me and my orange cat, Maple. The street feels safe, the rent is fair, and the mountains sit like a painted wall in the distance. Only one thing bothers me, the neighbor and the duplex next door. Most nights he blasts bass-heavy music until 2 or 3. The walls hum, the windows rattle, and dishes clink in the cupboards. I try earplugs, white noise apps, and polite knocks. He never answers. After a month of lost sleep, I filed a noise complaint through the city website. I hit submit and think that's the end. The next morning, my alarm rings at 6. I step outside and freeze all 4 tires on my Honda, sag to the rim, long straight cuts across each sidewall, the toe, the new tires, and the label wipe out my savings. I tell the officer who takes the report about the complaint. He shrugs and says they will note it. He also reminds me that proof and motive are different things. His words do not help my nerves. That evening, I knocked on my neighbor's door once more, hoping for a civil talk. The music stops, but no one opens up. I stand there listening to my heartbeat until the song starts again, louder than before. A week creeps by. I watch the street every night and triple lock the doors. Tuesday evening, Maple fails to come inside for dinner. I shake the food bag, walk the alley, and call her name. Until midnight I post flyers and check shelters. No sign. The house feels hollow without her weight on the couch. 7 days after she disappears, I open my mailbox. An envelope sits alone. No stamp or return address, just my name in shaky block letters. Inside, next time it's you. My hands shake so hard, I almost drop the note. 2 officers come take the letter in a plastic bag and walk the yard. No fingerprints, no cameras, no neighbors who saw anything lock up and call if something new happens. One says, I buy motion lights, window alarms, and 3 cheap security cameras. Night 1, raccoon alert. Night 2, nothing. Night 3 at 2:14 a.m. My phone buzzes backyard motion. The feed is black. Morning shows the camera gone. Screws still in the siding. Now I sleep on the couch with a baseball bat. Every creak makes me sit up. At work I jump. When someone laughs too loudly, I start leaving lights on when I drive away, so the place never looks empty. Fear does not wait for proof. 2 weeks later, a soft thump wakes me before dawn. It comes from the attic. I climb the pull-down ladder, flashlight shaking in my hand. Dust floats in the beam. Near the vent lies Maple's blue-collar class. Broken. No fur, no blood. Just the collar. I sink to my knees. Police search again. No prints. No forced entry. The detective is kind, but tired. We need a face on camera, he says. I nod, though I can barely breathe. I installed a sturdier camera over the porch and replaced the backyard unit for extra measure. I buy plywood and block the small basement windows. My landlord complains about the look, but I do it anyway. One cloudy afternoon, I drive home and see a white van at the duplex. My neighbor stands in the doorway laughing with two men hauling big speakers. He turns, meets my eyes, and waves slowly. My skin crawls that night. I sit in my car for 10 minutes before walking in. I make a list, sell the house, move, find a second job. If rent is higher, I call 3 property managers before bed. Real estate sites say demand is high in my area, so I feel a flicker of hope. At 3:07 a.m., the porch camera pings. A figure stands just beyond the light body, a dark outline. The person lifts a hand, shows a small object, maybe a key, maybe a knife, then backs away. I saved the clip and sent to the detective. He calls back at lunch, mask on the face, no plate on the street, useful but not enough for a warrant, he says. That afternoon, I find a stray screwdriver under the welcome mat. I do not touch it. Instead, I take photos, bag it with gloves, and add it to my growing folder of evidence. The detective thanks me by email, but can promise nothing. I pack a suitcase and sleep at a friend's place that night. The next morning, fresh scratches mark the front door near the lock. The friend helps me list the house. An investor buys it within a week sight unseen. I will never stay there again. I move into a gated complex with security staff and cameras in every hallway. Maple never returns the letter, the collar, the video, the screwdriver. None of it leads to charges. My file sits in a drawer marked inactive. I still check my mail with a small tremor. Anytime I hear music thump through a wall, my throat tightens somewhere. A person knows how to slash tires, steal pets, and slip letters into boxes without a sound. He knows my name. He knows I'm still afraid. Some nights I think I hear Maple.
Maybe he's waiting for the next time.
Bye.